Brought to you by WKTV. I'm Wayne Thomas. Welcome to another Grand Rapids Ghost Hunters podcast. Thank you for joining our forum in search of paranormal possibilities. Please keep an open mind about things you might not easily believe as we discuss all things paranormal. I'd like to thank Gene Gregory once again at the controls. And our last podcast, it was Matt Zuby, who was stuck out late here with us, and because we were here quite late that night. And so thanks to Matt. This is normally the time when I would introduce the panel. But I guess
here they are.
I guess we don't have to worry about that. Ryan Mason may join us, but Kim Colleen's home sick with her boy, and Brandon Jose, he couldn't make it. So it's me and my friend, Laura Briggs.
Hello. It's so nice to come back and visit you, Wayne. And I really believe that it's supposed to just be you and me, because if everybody was here, then they were meant to be here. So we'll see what happens. I think we're going to have a good time.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, you may recognize Laura because it wasn't much, it was like 2 podcasts ago.
I think so.
You were here, but not as an astrologist, which you're here representing that field here tonight.
Right. I am the girl that just wears a lot of different hats. So, but I think for me, part of the tie-in with astrology kind of ties into the rest of that, because the more I go and look into these other subjects, the more everything ties together, and we just kind of can come back and start connecting all these things around. So astrology was a really natural fit. And actually for me, astrology was my first love and my first walk into some of the, I guess I'd say, occult practices. I don't know. It's really difficult to say. I don't know if I would put it in a paranormal place, because to me it's more of a science, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's also an art, and it's also esoteric, and there's a lot of different places that you could put it. So I think we'll just, I'll let you know. Well, maybe we can break this down in a real simple, easy form so everybody has an idea.
All right, yeah. I definitely want to do that, because those questions are on my mind, and they came right away, whether it's paranormal even. But let's review a little bit. I know you weren't here, but our last podcast was Afterlife Road Paranormal with Ben Goldman and Ryan Mondelek. Now, they're Michigan State students. They're doing this Michigan Haunted web series. They do like YouTube's short videos. And then actually Brandon Jose went on an investigation with them. They went and looked into the Ada Witch. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Yeah, I've heard some stuff about that. I think I caught that podcast because I remember them talking about being really respectful in that cemetery. Was that the same
was
group?
at Bath. Right,
yeah.
They went to Bath.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think I caught some of that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those guys, they're young.
I appreciated that they were very respectful in that aspect.
I did too.
I mean,
they really slowed everything down there. They were at that tombstone, and they did it right, and they did it with feeling. Because I was kind of worried about that. The way they go into some of their stuff scares me.
I want to pull that statement you just said right there. They did it right. I would like to, at this point, tell you, because you're a Capricorn Sun person, doing it right is paramount to who you are.
Oh, yeah.
You would never do it not right. You would never do it without integrity, and you would never be in that position where it wouldn't be that way. So astrology applies to many facets of our life, and even unconsciously you begin to do those traits and those things about that. That's a very Capricorn way of being, is doing it right.
Yeah, it is important to me, and I always come in prepared. This one was a little bit difficult. You didn't write a book, so I don't
have any published books or anything like that. Eventually, probably I should do that. That's in my destiny, I think, somewhere to do that. But at this point, I'm just busy, focused on work and life, and trying to help all these people that come to me with different questions and different things. So,
yeah, I know I'm very interested, and so I did some research.
Yeah.
I mean, questions came up right away. I mean, you hit on some of that stuff already. I mean, is it paranormal? Is it art? Is it science? Is it pseudoscience? Is it a gift? Is it something that you were born with? I mean, The more I looked into this, the more confused I got.
And I agree with you. And I think that it is all of those things that you just mentioned. And, when I started it, for me, I was about, what's my sun sign? Because, hey, what's your sign, right? That was our time,
Right.
I'm dating us, sorry. But that was the thing. That was a public, everybody was interested in that. So my first look into that was to say, what is my sun sign? What is it? And as I began to dig, I was like, holy crap, this goes on rabbit holes and places and levels and things that I would never know. We could talk literally 300 hours about this today if we want.
Let's start with Astrology 101.
101. Let's start with that.
Very basic.
Very basic. So what it is basically is at the moment that you were born, and I'm going to start it at that format of it, there was a snapshot of where you came in, located at your time, your place of birth, and where you were born, everything located. It takes a snapshot, and that's like a star chart, I want to say, or a natal chart, or a birth chart. It's your roadmap of the energies, based on where things lie in the sky. And astronomy is, you didn't mention, but is really very paramount. They really work hand in hand. To know astronomy is to know astrology in a lot of ways.
I didn't mention it, but it's in my notes.
Yeah.
Astronomy versus astrology.
Right. Astronomy would be the straight study of the planets and their alignments and their things like that. I think the astrology piece of that is using those energies that we don't see from those planets and bringing them down into our modern existence, into this reality type of a plane. That's been going on forever, since the early ages. Every culture, I think, every person since time as we've ever known it works on some sort of belief system of that, of astrology. There's several different kinds. We have Vedic astrology, which is the Indian practice, which is a little bit different, but it's based off the Vedas. We have Western astrology, which is what we're talking about today. There's vibrational astrology, which talks about degrees between planets. I mean, you can go on. There's Chinese astrology. We've all seen the menu, right?
Right.
Are you the dragon, the pig, the horse?
The year of the pig.
Exactly. So every culture has its own piece of that, and every part of, I think, of people and just wanting to know have their own systems for that. But we're talking about Western astrology today, and that's primarily what we practice here in the West. So based on that snapshot chart where you were born, it lays out in a circular position where those planets are and in what houses they are at. So Western astrology is based on a big wheel that's broken down into 12 different sections. Each one of these sections has a sign attached to it, and in those signs there are degrees, 30 degrees. Each one of those houses is conjunct or is part of those planets. So the best way for me to say is when I said your sun was in Capricorn, meaning when you were born, the sun and the big wheel in the sky and the big astrology in the sky, the big circle in the sky, your sun landed in Capricorn, in Capricorn. In this case, it happened to be in your third house. So it's a way of laying out this big wheel that we naturally have, which is based off the equinoxes, our seasons, starting with Aries, which is the spring, running all the way back around through spring, summer, winter, fall. So it's based off the equinoxes. It's based off our things. So that's how the wheel sits in that sky, that big wheel. And your chart then, when you were born, gets placed on this wheel, but it's also individual to you as to where those things start. So when the sun on the big wheel was in Capricorn down here, for you, that's where it laid that picture, only it was in the third house. So yours is in the third house. And it's really hard to see that, and I don't know if you guys can get that. So you see you have this big confusing chart here, and it has the circles. The houses are these little divisions right here, and the signs that are attached to them. Those planets would be on the inside. And these lines denote just energies that work well together or against each other a little bit for basic purposes.
So for the viewers and the listeners, I shared my birth date, time of birth. Was it? Do you need it right down to
You
the
do,
minute?
and I'll tell you why. Because it's so individualized to where you were born, the time you were born, if you know it, which is really important. It can make those things shift on that circle, on that wheel. And by shifting them, if it's not accurate, then it doesn't always help the way you may relate to it. It may be off slightly, and you would want to be as accurate as you can. Because some of the things that move really quickly, like Mercury moves around the sun really quickly, that we'd like to know in that 24-hour period where that is. That can make a difference, how close or far it is from something else. But the big planets like Neptune take years to move around. In fact, you read up to that age of Aquarius statement. Astrologically, we really can't even pinpoint where that is. There's some different thoughts about when that is.
Yeah. I wanted to get into that.
Yeah.
My literary reference was the song Aquarius.
And it's great.
It came out in 1969. This version is the Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In by the Fifth Dimension that I used. Now, I don't know where you were in 69. Were you weren't even born yet?
I was born, but I wasn't probably old enough to really know what was going on. But regardless of that generation, and I did take some notes because I don't want to misquote that, but the generation that came in, which would be your generation, kind of the baby boomers, the 1955, area.
55, right.
Yeah. That when that generation happened, the planet Neptune was in Libra, and that brought about just wonderful artistic and the hippie stuff. It brought in free love
Right.
and those ideals. So I love the group, the Fifth Dimension, which would be a very Neptunian thing to say, come across with that concept of what this age of Aquarius really is. What it is about every 2100 years, and that big wheel that we talked about, it shifts. Things will shift to a different sign. So those ages also move. Let's just go back to 100 BC. We were in the age of Pisces. So, and you can even go back and find religious references to that with the fish and all the different things. The symbol for Pisces is the fish. It's a dual sign. So that far back, we were actually in the age of Pisces. Moving ahead now, 2,000 years later, we're tipping, or we actually have crossed into the next sign, which following Pisces is Aquarius.
So for the average layman, what you just said, I'm going to have to translate this.
That is good.
Because
I know it's so, I don't know. I've always struggled trying to explain it at that level, but please go ahead.
The age of Aquarius, it will last 2,150 years. But has it started already? Is it current or forthcoming? And that's the question that I ask, and I got about 3 or 4 different answers.
And that's the problem. And I think that you will find there are people that will tell you that it started in 1999. There are some that say it had started in 2012.
2012,
yes,
I have that.
Yep, because we can't pinpoint. No one was around 1,000 years to go to look into that and talk about that. But basically, we're shifting up into that. My personal belief is that we are in it fully, and when we get everybody moving into Aquarius, the sun, Jupiter, everybody's going to slide in 2020, and I think we are fully in the very foot door in the beginning of that.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, that's my personal perspective. There's a lot of configurations and some things that are coming up, and I really believe that with those transits, we are fully in it. I think that it has started, though, and what does it mean, the age of Aquarius? What is it about? Well, Aquarius is the sign that rules technology. It's a sign that rules health, related things. We're talking about the emergence of AI, artificial intelligence, right? We're talking about bioman, really chipping humans and merging machine and humans together. It's altruistic because an Aquarius is a very altruistic sign, but it's also very out there. It's a visionary sign. So I think we're going to see, and we've already begun to see the beginnings of that age where we're getting into some of these things. Cryptocurrency, another strange, it's a way of doing that. Just those type of visionary, different types of things. I think you're going to see huge advancements in medicine, for sure.
So if you research it, it might tell you it started in the 20th century. It might tell you it's not going to start till the 24th century.
I think no. I'm personally, my belief is that it started sooner, and I think we're about to fully put the first foot in it.
The astrologists believe that we're in it.
Yes.
The astronomists believe that it might be another 600 years before we actually enter the age of Aquarius.
Right. And I think for the astrology part, it was when that star Regulus went through Leo, and they say, okay, that's where it started it, and that's where you're getting the conflict. And I think it's the astronomy part is just a very acute, very, very good science. It's very direct and it's very precise. The astrology is the human element. It's the part that wants to apply all this in a human form. It's the art part of astronomy. The art. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Well, the way I broke it down, astronomy is like foretelling, horoscopes, and I think that's the use of it. Whereas astronomists, are the math.
Kind
part of it.
And I think they both just kind of intertwine and they walk together, and you do have to have
they walk together.
There's
definitely.
mathematical, the astrology is based off of certain mathematical, geometric really configurations. So and I think that the predictive part of astrology comes in when we review the past history, because what happens is a lot of folks can go back, and you'll go back and you'll say, well, and the last time we had this set up in the sky, it was here and the stock market fell, or World War II started here, or you know what I mean? So that predictive part of that comes from looking at the past and then saying, okay, this is what happened last time, this is what I think will happen this time.
You think history repeats itself?
I do think history repeats itself, but I think it repeats in different ways. So to say, this is we're going to have a war because the last time this happened, I don't know that, but I think there'd be a conflict of some sort.
Now, these charts, you think this was a tool like for people planting their crops originally?
Yeah, absolutely,
that kind of
because the moon was very important. Remember, we didn't have all that technology. They used the sky, right, for directions. They used it to use it, yes, for planting, and people still plant by the moon cycles, very much so. It's always, we were really disconnected as we evolved from the natural part of that, I think. But absolutely, that was used, and they use it still today. And there's evolutionary astrologers. These are folks that use this in a daily practice, and use that to do things in their life, to help them make decisions in their life, or to base things off of when they start or stop a business. The Vedic astrology still uses this as a compatibility for marriage.
Whether
charts are always consulted for marriage.
Me being a Capricorn, whether I'm going to get along with the Taurus.
Right. Very much so. Very much so. They base those charts, and that's a very modern practice today still in other parts of the world. Chinese too, a little bit, So it's used as, I think it's used as a tool. People will say, oh, it's kind of my religion. I don't want to cross it over into a religious point because it seems too sciencey kind of for that. And because it's so open for interpretation, I could look at this chart. 3 other people that do astrology could look at this chart, and every one of us is going to tell you a little something different about it.
That's interesting. Right.
And until you have that done and look at things and say, oh, that feels right for me, or, oh, okay, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking that's right for me.
I would think 20 years experience helps.
It helps a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know what? There are some folks that are really new that come on and they have really great insights. So basically, that chart is open to the person that's interpreting it for you based on the knowledge that they have, the teachers they've been to, the books that they've read. It's filtered through their particular eyes and their style. So I like that point of it, but I would always encourage people to do research. And if something doesn't always sit or feel right, then there's a possibility that the calculation was off, or that you're like you have many planets and many things that were kind of on latent degrees and signs. So there's different ways to move this chart or run this chart that could sway those on one side or the other.
And then I'm on the cusp.
You do have some. Yep. So one thing I would say about your chart here for sure is you have this Neptune here in Libra at 28 degrees. So how you read that is 28 degrees and 12 seconds. That's when you were born. That's exactly where it was sitting in the sky when you came in. You would be here in the middle, and to the east where the sun would rise is this way. To the west where it sets is this way. The very top of the heaven, the very top highest point in the sky is the MC here, your midheaven. And the lowest part of your chart, what's mostly underneath down here in the IC. So when you were born, your ascendant was in the sign of Scorpio. You didn't have any planets necessarily right here close, although Neptune is there. Your ascendant is in Scorpio. So what that would say to me is you were a Scorpio rising, and Scorpio happens to be a very kind of a karmic planet. So I would say for you, you had a purposeful intention to come into this life right there at that time. Because of being a karmic planet, you came with specific tasks, specific ideas.
2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, that you wanted to do in this lifetime. You came with all of that, kind of that knowledge that comes in here. And this Neptune at the late degree up here in the same thing. And it's hard to kind of see where that's kind of built. But that house right there in the 12th house has a little bit of both, right? It's kind of in between the Scorpio and the Libra part of that. That 12th house is the house that walks between the worlds. That's what its rulership is. So when we talk about like some of those psychic things and some of that, you have a propensity to be a very psychic or sensitive person to other worldly things, to other dimensions, to other times. With Neptune there, that makes you very sensitive to it. And with it being, sitting in the house of Scorpio here, Scorpio again is very karmic, but it's also a very psychic planet. It's based on life, death, and transformation. So it's a researcher planet. It gets to the bottom of things, and it sees beyond the superficial of things. Kind of can deal with psychology a little bit and things like that too. So
they used to call me Deep Thought.
There it is. That is there. No, I believe that because the superficial things really weren't that exciting probably for you. The other part of that is you have the moon that sits in Scorpio. So when you have your sun sign, that is how we would see you. So if somebody met you, they would see that Capricorn person, very, very, direct, kind of the businessman, the president, not the manager, but the president of the company, the person that wants to do things right. They're very set. They're very kind of a regimented way of being, not overly emotional, doesn't talk a lot. So that's your sun sign. That's how they would see you. The rising sign is how you think. So although you are a Capricorn person to people that walk up to you, that is not how you think. You are a Scorpio person. You're very different on the other side of that. So I think this is the cruise where people read that horoscope and they go, oh, I'm reading this for Taurus because I'm a Taurus, but this is not me. I don't get it. Well, you really wouldn't because you don't have the Taurus on the rising sign. Maybe you're a Leo, so you see it totally different. So you're filtering everything that you get through your rising sign, how you think, versus what we're seeing out in the world. And then your moon is the emotional piece of you. What do you do when you get pushed? What do you do when you're happy? What do you do when you're emotionally? Where does your creativity, things that would be related to that sort of a situation. So with the moon in Scorpio, again, you're a very deep person. Scorpio is a very deep planet. It's quiet and it likes to be alone. It wants to understand and delve into the mysteries of things. It needs to know. It just needs to know. And Scorpio really wants to know God, whatever God might be in that context, whether that's a religious, true, actual religious thing, or just God as being yourself, your own soul, your own inner thing that you would go to. So those two things right there with that 12th house just says, and in your first two, just says to me, you have a lot of that energy. So the fact that you do what you do is very, very, very true to your chart.
It's not surprising.
No, it is not. It's not surprising because that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's nice to know.
You couldn't be any different. You're really living out your rising sign and your moon, and even that Capricorn too, part of that, because you are doing it you're doing it to what you believe is the right way, and with integrity and dignity, and building a solid way of doing it. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get together with 5 people and go out over here and we're just going to go do this and then maybe we'll talk about it. It's like, no, we're going to talk about it. We're going to teach people.
Yeah.
We're going to,
I do like an order to things.
It's important.
As long as it's my order.
Well, because you're the boss. You're the head of that. You're the one the leader that the people will go to.
We're just having a discussion here.
That's right. It's not really true.
Except for Jean. Jean's in charge.
Jean's like, oh, yeah, great, thanks. But, I mean, that's the natural part of who you are. And that's good. You're living that out. And in the 3rd house down there, that's where your sun is, that's the house that would rule the cousins, siblings, and neighbors. So groups, sometimes not all kinds of groups, but I would say close people that are close to you, community stuff, those kind of your neighbors, people that you would consider family. You have that natural ability to where you probably take charge, or they see you as being in charge. Whether you are or not.
I'm in charge I'm in charge of the games at the family reunion. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm in charge of.
That's a really nice example.
Keeping the kids entertained.
Keeping the kids entertained because they know that you can. So, I mean, that's just one of the things. So, basically, that's what I would say. If you ever are listening to those horoscopes and you want to know, it's the sun and the moon and the rising sign. And those are probably some of the big 3 things that if you know those things about yourself, where those signs sit, it helps you get through a lot of things. You'll understand why you have a natural disposition to something, why you always act that way when somebody makes you mad, where you're, why it is that you can't ever get enough and study in this particular area, or why you always wanted to be a baker yet you're not. I mean, there's a lot of different parts of that can kind of help you. And when I work with people, that's what I do. I think that the astrology really is a key to you knowing yourself, knowing what your gifts are, knowing where some of those challenges lie for you so that you can overcome them, knowing about yourself and how you interact, and then taking that and doing that with others. For me, I like to know the people I work with so that I know how to approach them better. If I know somebody happens to, maybe be a Pisces person, I'm never going to come screaming at them angry.
Okay.
Because they would be just devastated.
Right.
To a terrible place. I like to know those types of things for myself so that I can understand and work with people better. And I think it's good if you know that about yourself, because it's just a tool. So I use this as a tool to self-knowledge more than a predictive thing. But it also helps explain things to people that say, why do I constantly get in these situations?
It's in your nature?
It's your nature, but those nodes of the moon, which are mathematical computations between the sun and the moon, they kind of show you in this lifetime what you're working on, what you chose to. If you believe in the reincarnation, and no disrespect to anybody's religious, beliefs or anything, but if you believe that you reincarnate, that ascendant sign is where you came from the last life. So the minute you left your last life, that ascendant denotes right where that was. So you could say when you left in Scorpio, so your last life was in the house of Scorpio. So you're coming into this life knowing Scorpio energy, knowing the investigative part.
Well, I'm going to have to look into that
intuition. More. Well, and I think it's a really nice way to say, okay, those are kind of my natural gifts. I did do that stuff for you, and I did write it down for you, so you'll have that too, But that's a natural place that comes very easy to you, and you don't have to necessarily super dig into that, because it's natural by nature. That's who you are. One thing I'll say about Scorpio rising people, and I can say this honestly because I am one, people have this tendency to either really like you or not like you at all, and you'll have no reason why you will never understand why they don't like you. They'll just look at you or whatever will happen, and they'll be like, I hate that guy, I think that this particular sign is extremely good at seeing what other people don't want you to see. So if you've ever met someone and And just for some reason, that you've heard, well, they don't like you, or you'll never understand that. And I always do that just as a comforting piece for Scorpio rising people, because we don't always know why. They just have this feeling that they can feel that presence, that you actually can see what they can hide. And I'm going to bet anything you're very good at picking out those flaws or those things in people, where you can look at them and go, if you just change that, you would be perfect, or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a natural, that's part of it, because you've coming in with that sign, and you have that energy. You've got that already.
I can see the moon as being a very strong force.
It's very strong.
Controls the tides.
Yes,
and then
it does.
it control our emotions?
I think
full
it can.
Moon?
Oh,
Is there something
absolutely.
to full moon?
And the moon is a place where things change a lot. Your moods change with the moon. The moon is your emotional stuff. So moods are connected, just like the tides, right? So for you, with that moon in Scorpio, you can go from being super, maybe even feeling possessive, or really wanting to dig those heels in on a subject or something or someone, to being very, whatever. I don't really, I'm done with you. I'm over this, we're moving on, kind of a thing. And it's just one of those things that it changes all the time. So you may feel that. And I think that also is part of something that helps you get into those other dimensions, because in order to do that, you've got to change, right? You can't to sleep, like water flows in. Think of the moon as water. It flows into those other things. It's easily changeable, and you can do that very easily.
Okay.
So it's one of the ways that I would say with your moon there makes you able to do that. Easier than other people. If your moon is in a planet that's kind of earthy, and all of those planets also have an earth, water, or fire attachment to them. Those are the characteristics that they come in with. And they also have energies that are either mutable, which means changing all the time, fixed, which means fixed, I'm digging my heels in, I'm not changing anything, or cardinal, which are initiators. They're the fire starters, they're the seed planters. And in terms of the harvest, we need all of those, right? We need to have every one of those stages. We need to have somebody to plant the seed, we need to have somebody to harvest the seed, and we need to have somebody to tow it under, burn the field when it's done, so that we can restart that process. So the moon in Scorpio is in a water sign, and water sign people and moon water sign people, are very, very much can flow up and down with the tides.
So the moons in the planets are significant, but apparently asteroids, comets, not so much.
I think that if you will talk to some people, and they will tell you, yes, that these have an influence on us. And other people will say, well, maybe. I think it just depends on how deep you want to go, and how far into it you really want to be. Chiron is out here. This is not a planet per se, but it's something that we use a lot, because that's a place where you may not, it's the wounded healer. So you heal yourself by healing others. So it's a place where you're not, maybe don't feel so good about yourself. That's what I always identified it as. So there's
some heavy stuff.
You do use them. I know, and I'm trying. It's so hard, because if you don't, it's like it's asking somebody to understand a Spanish conversation when they speak 5 words of Spanish. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So there's a lot that goes into it. You can make it super complex, or you can make it not complex at all. It's just a matter of, I just wanted people to understand, I think this time, how that circle works, and why when we say your moon is in Scorpio, that means that snapshot when you were born on the big wheel, the equinoxes that don't change, the big wheel that starts with Aries. When you were born, your moon was way over here in Scorpio on the big the big one in the sky, I guess. I don't know how else to explain that.
Now, if you go outside, you look at night, you look up, do you see different stuff than what most of us see?
I know where Venus is, and I think a lot of people do. You can see Venus, the morning star, right up there. Sure. You can see Jupiter on occasion. I think it's up there right now. It's been a while since I was out stargazing. I'm a moon person, so I would go see the different phases of the moon more than I would.
I bet you'd be fun with a telescope.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I like it. I love the constellations, and I think there's a natural propensity. For me, I know there is. For me, I in do my Vedic chart, and I have something in Vishaka Nakshatra, which is basically the astrologer. That's what I am. So I'm always looking at the sky. I'm always looking at the stars and the constellations. That's where my head goes most of the time. So it's just it's a natural thing that I would always want to be attracted to, or maybe somebody else would be more down to earth. And no, I like money. I like doing books and numbers. I don't have time for that.
Is there a hierarchy for astrologists? I mean,
in terms
different
of
positions that you can occupy, or
there's always formal. When I say formal training, in terms of you can go with different associations. There are several different associations, and you could get accreditation from them. You can work under teachers and get accreditation from them. I don't know. There's only one place I know that does formal training, and that's in England. And you can actually get a master's in that.
Okay.
So you can do that. But I think that this is the part that's more the arts and science of this. It's like I don't know any place where you can be a bachelor's in tarot reading or divinational arts. And do you know what I mean? So I think that it's that sort of a situation. And again, the guy that interprets this stuff for you for 20 years may miss something that the person that's looked at charts for 2 months can find. It's really up to the interpretation of that person that's doing that chart for you.
Is that where the art comes in?
I do believe that. And I think just like anything else, there are people that are going to be really, really good at expressing what they're trying to say, or seeing bigger picture or little picture, things in your chart, where some people are going to be directly by the book people. If it's here, it means this. If it's here, it means this. So that's why I always kind of, I don't caution them, but I would say to people, if you get a reading and it doesn't sound right to you, don't be afraid to look other places or look up information yourself, because it may be a way you're just not receiving their style.
It doesn't necessarily read like a book.
It does not read like a book. It reads like a book from a person who's telling you the story that read the book. Does that make sense? I mean, it really is subjective to the interpretation of the person doing it. But we still run off the basic thing. We all agree that this is the chart. We all agree that this is the house. We all agree that this is the sign. We all come from the basic beginnings of that. But how those things interact to each other and how they work, I would say for me, I'm more of an intuitive reader. When I look at somebody's chart, I intuitively get a big picture image. But that's how I read, because that's how I do everything in my life. I'm an intuitive person. That's how it comes for me. Somebody else may look at this and they might say, okay, well, you have this here and this here and this here. So absolutely, this is all it means. I don't know. They would never go to a different place.
Well, you're a psychic astrologist.
I am kind of, yes, I am. I mean, that's how I read, and I do I know the works that are underneath, but when I read, certain things come out to me, and I see those things. So I comment on those aspects that to me really say this, and then I find a way that people can integrate that into their life, because I still want to come from the place that chart is used to help you along. It's your guidebook. It's your tool to knowing yourself, so that you can accomplish things that you want to accomplish in the world.
So I see it's a different tool than what I thought originally. I thought maybe, when it was introduced in Egypt and to the Greek kings, that they were interested in, when should I go to war?
They were, and it was used, and it absolutely was used for that. And I would never say to people that you could not do that. I think it was J.P. Morgan that made that famous quote that said that millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do.
No.
It's knowing when to do and when not to do something. But what that is using the energies when they're beneficial to you.
How to play the stock market?
Maybe. When the Chinese astrology will tell you where to speculate, in the east, west, north, or south, for what that can be worth. But I think there are people that are just really good at money, and they're really good at speculation. And they come in there with that. They're entrepreneurs that no matter what they touch, they make something out of everything.
Right.
It's their natural gifts, where it might be harder for other people.
It's not necessarily in their stars?
I think entrepreneurs.
It is?
I mean, I'm sure if we looked, we could go back and find it. You know,
Right.
I think that it's there. But that doesn't mean other people can't. It just means that you may have a harder time at doing it. It's the same premise of that mediumship, and we talked about some of that paranormal stuff. What's really easy to you may be extremely hard for someone else. It's not saying they can't get there, but they're going to have more obstacles than you are because you came in to this lifetime with that energy. It's a natural. And for you, with your ascendant there and your moon there, it is so everyday part of your life. I think you would not even notice where it began and where it ended. You have taken that to a thinking and into a feeling and putting it out there almost in that evolutionary process where you don't just think that way, you act that way. It's a very fluent thing for you, where for some, not so much, you know. Other people may have separate things or moons that are not in their happy place because some of those houses the moon isn't happy in.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't want to be in an earthy sign where it's in the dirt. The moon's in the sky. It wants to be illuminating the darkness.
What do you do when you read someone's chart and it doesn't necessarily have happy things in it? How do you handle that?
You know, it would be the same way I would do when I read for someone else. I don't want to say I sugarcoat it because I don't want to ever not tell someone the truth. But I would find a gentler way or a way in which we could deliver that information but also give them a piece of information to help them work through that. I'm not going to say, okay, here's your problem, bye. I'm going to say, look, this is what's going on, but there's a way around that. If you can do more of this in your life, it will take some of that off.
Sure.
So, and I have Mars and Venus in Capricorn, so I want to do it the right way.
Yeah.
It's just who I am, too. I wouldn't do that to somebody. I would never want to give misinformation or put that out there to someone in a way that I would just leave them hanging like that. It's not the right way in my way of being. I couldn't do that. My energy won't direct that way. It doesn't like it. It wants to be built on foundations.
So people call you up and say, I want you to run my charts?
Yeah, they do. And that's really what we do. You know, if they've had a birth chart done before, then we look at the transits. And what the transits means is what is going on in the big sky now versus what's going on in your chart. So there are things that happened. We've all heard of Mercury retrograde, right? We know, what does that mean? Mercury retrograde, when cars break down and your computer stops working.
Oh, okay.
and they say, oh, you shouldn't sign a contract and you don't want to do anything. Well, Mercury is the planet of communication and it rules, you know, machines and things like that. So, I mean, when it's not in its strongest position, when it's retrograde, when it's turning backwards, it has a habit of causing some conflicts, people will say. Other people will tell you that's absolutely ridiculous. They don't know what you're talking about. But when you have those sorts of situations going on, you know, that's one of the things that you can look for in your chart. And it just kind of depends. You might not want to launch that campaign or sign that contract.
Sure.
Because what happens sometimes is you miss something or you go back and it's not what it should have been completely. So knowing the astrology that's going on at the time you're doing things also helps you understand and use that and apply that in a way that is using energies to your benefit versus your detriment, you know?
I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this after 101 or not. You know, and then you and I talked about, because I'm right on the cusp of Aquarius, and then the 2019 yearly horoscope for Aquarius talked about the 7 years of change. After 7 years of change, and it just so happened that just fit right into what's going on with me.
I think so too, and I think that that's part of it. And you know, for you, yeah, right now the outer planets are moving through and touching your Capricorn Aquarius stuff. So as this transiting node moves through there, what it's doing is it's shaking up your third house, friends, cousins, neighbors, community.
Right, you mentioned that.
You're reevaluating and you're letting go of things that really no longer serve your soul, which is perfect because you really want to push that way. You want to get to that part where you have value in your relationships, where you are more directed in those things. That's important, and you're building a better foundation. So yeah, for you, not for everyone.
Right.
If you don't have anything going on in a Capricorn or Cancer right now, which is where those nodes are, this may not really affect you at all. You might be like, I don't know what these people are talking about because it's not bothering me. But for you in particular, yeah, it's moving through there. So you're going to have some upset a little bit about that, but it's only doing it to redesign it to better fit what your life is now.
Okay.
That's one way to look at it.
I know in my horoscope it talked about a 7 years, and then now the next 7 years, you know, I'm 65, so I'm thinking another 7 years is at least another 7 years.
That's right. Another 7 years is another 7 years. You got it. So
I kind of like the sound of that.
But as it aspects and as it comes across, there will be times when that energy feels super heavy and times when it will let off. As it passes through your particular ones, you'll have an ease in that. It's not a constant pressure of 7 years. You know, that's going to be like this forever. It's not.
Right.
And that's one of the things I would absolutely say when those transits happen. This is not forever. This is only temporary. As it moves through, it will move away and the energy will lessen for you.
Bad luck can only last so long.
That's right. Bad luck.
Yeah.
It's always a way to turn it around,
seems
right?
like things run in a cycle like that, or deaths, you know, in threes for some reason. That's just the saying that goes. That I grew up with.
Kind of crazily true sometimes, isn't it? I know, right? It's a different thing.
In our family, we grew up reading horoscopes. I mean, we had fun with it. And then there was a lot of superstition in our house. If you drop some silverware, it's like, oh, you're going to have company. And it depends on whether it was a fork or a spoon or a knife, depending on what kind of company you're going to have. So, and then I had all these things, you know, was it paranormal? Is it art? Is it science? Is it pseudoscience? Is it a gift? Now you're telling me it's all those things. It's not one of those.
But I think it is. I don't think you can, I want to say you can't define it, but it can be as much or as little as you need it to be. And it's kind of funny you just said that superstition in your house. So the planet Saturn here for you is in Scorpio, and so is your moon. So Saturn represents your father as well. And the moon also represents your mother. So both of them being in there, they would both be very open to that. They would both be superstitious.
Yeah.
You may have had many conversations about the occult type things, psychology, philosophy. You know, there's a lot of different things that may have been very, very normal in your house to talk about. And your mother might have been a little bit moody. You know, your dad could have been, I don't want to say possessive, but he could have had some really quick flashes of anger. Like,
sure.
Oh, man.
Right. I know a lot of cuss words.
Yeah.
I know them all.
And then it would be gone.
I don't necessarily use them, but I know them.
And then it's gone. It's not a permanent thing. So, yeah.
So you took my numbers, my exact birth date and time.
Yep.
Put it in your computer.
Yeah, this is actually a program that you can run online. I use this one because I'm old school. There are several different ones. This is Astro.com. There's also Astro Gold or Astrofire for like Mac PC stuff. I mean, you could, if you went to online and you typed in free natal chart, or it will give you a bunch of different ones, and you could literally go in and plug in everything that I did, and it will print you this chart. I'm a big proponent of knowledge is not something that you own. So I always try to tell people where to go to get that stuff free. You know what I mean? I don't believe that it's a commodity that you have to pay me to get.
Right.
That bothers me when it's free. It should be free to everyone, you know? So,
we don't own the water either.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so I mean, I'm telling you that. In fact, for you, I did go to a site that I really like. It's called Cafe Astrology, and printed one off for you that literally is 30 pages long. Now, I knew we weren't going into 30 pages, and I'm not going to do 30 hours of trying to tell you what every one of these little things means.
Right.
Here, there, and everywhere. Because you can read that on your own time if you choose to go into that. And I usually give that to people. What I just did was look at this as an overview and point out some of those things that I thought were really interesting or kind of important for you to know and understand. One being that generational aspect of that Libra, because that Neptune in that Libra there too is very poetic, and I think you're a poetry writer, are you not?
Yeah, I published some poems.
Yeah,
right. I did one of my poems here
much,
for the literary reference that we start with. Right.
It's very much in your nature to do that. You're acting out your way of being and your way of expressing things in the world. So very natural to you, and probably very
Very natural to me.
yeah.
Right.
So for some people, that's a really good peace of mind that they always wondered, why is it that I always want to do that? Well, because that's where you're at. That's what you came in with, and that's what your energy you chose to work this time around. So
A disclaimer about these poems and lyrics that I use is I can't possibly do the whole Hiawatha's songs. It's a book, I mean, and I can't do the whole Raven poem on here. So what I have to do is, it's a artistic license. I have to change it, reduce it. So just to make that disclaimer, when we do the Raven, it's not the whole Raven. It might not even be in the order.
right.
But just to point that out.
Just some nice quotes and even your own stuff. So it's very cool that you do that. I mean, that's a talent and a natural ability that you have, but also a natural talent that people from your generation have. That 60, that 50, 3 to 65 are naturally.
Oh.
Salvador Dali has that same Neptune.
It's our generation.
There. It is a generation.
The hippie generation.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying?
Very much so. That naturally, most of you will have that, and you'll have the vision of that. Neptune is a planet that doesn't have boundaries, so it's very easy for it to, just kind of float like a fog in and out of things. And I think artistically, you have to have no boundaries, right? You don't want to have creativity that you box in. You have to have the vision, and you have to be able to do that for the art.
Yeah, art doesn't fit in a box either.
No, it does not.
Right.
So again, it's another way that kind of plays out.
Do you think it originated in Babylon? I mean,
think,
this is my research, so that's why I want
no,
to
and
get
I agree, and I do think that it's gone back that far. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think as long as man has been alive and had a conscious thought, that he's always looked up to the stars, and that these systems have developed through somebody who has said, "Okay, I'm gonna tell you this is what I feel, this is what I think, this is who I am," and they've just through time, and then consequently, as each new civilization came, it was carried something from the old,
so
and then adapted it and changed it to their own.
Somewhere in antiquity, it started. I don't know. How
I
many
believe
years
Egyptian.
ago?
Egyptians did astrology
2,400 years ago.
all the way back. I think and if we go back even farther, we'll still find things. It was in that age. That was what men were doing. It was the age of gods and kings, right? We always looked outside of ourselves to find ourselves.
Sure, yeah.
So.
Yeah, we've been searching, I think, from the beginning. Well, Laura, we've been here almost an hour already.
Sorry, I know. It could just go forever and ever, and I probably got way off track.
I don't think so.
I hope
for a class 101, I think it was perfect. I mean, yeah, you lost me.
I'm sure I did. Yeah, Jean's going, what?
Yeah, I'm in the 7th house. Yeah, you heard the song Aquarius and understood exactly what they were talking about when the moon is in the 7th house.
But my Neptune is also in where everything is here. I'm with you guys because my moon is there too.
Okay.
Neptune is in Scorpio for me, so it makes perfect sense to me. May not make sense to anyone else, but
before we get to final thought, I have some crazy questions. Now, what happens if you have a room full of Taurus? Everybody's the bull. Is that trouble? My wife's Taurus.
I know, and I know, right? Well, I think that there's certain traits and characteristics, and that's a really good point to bring up. Every one of those Taurus people were born in a different place and at a different time.
True.
So although they were all Taurus suns, which we may see, every one of them thinks, feels, and acts very differently.
Good
Some
point.
might be close and act somewhat similar. So, trouble, no. That, to me, Taurus is a sign that I've always struggled just a little bit with.
Oh.
I'm a fire sign person, and I'm very impulsive, and Taurus is a very slow, methodical, moving thing. So I get frustrated easily with that energy sometimes. But I don't think it would be a problem at all. I think that you would be really good. But knowing that Taurus stuff is there, if you stay to your traditional Capricorn, I'm in charge, this is where it's at, I think they would fall in line. Because Taurus people don't need to find things out the hard way. they're good with you telling them that's where it's at.
Oh.
That's how they are. But they're also pretty good business people in their own right, and they're good at managing some things. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, so they have a lot of art and beauty. They really get artistic stuff really well, and take it down to a practical material level.
Maybe that's why we like music concerts so much, my wife and I.
Oh, sure.
So now I know you talked about Sagittarius a little
How
bit.
old is your? Well, we have to wait and see where she's at. But your wife's also probably up in this range with you with that Neptune.
So what is your sign?
I am a Sagittarius sun.
I thought you said Sagittarius.
Yeah.
And then Jean.
What's Jean's her birthday?
Come on, we got to get Jean's.
Scorpio. November
Oh,
18th.
there he is, sitting behind the scenes, taking it all.
Really? That fits? Does that fit? That fits, Laura?
It fits. He's the quiet guy. You didn't miss one thing of what I said, though. I bet you. That's fine. No, but poor Scorpio. Scorpio always gets a bad rap, but really, they do. They do. Scorpio people get it because they say, "Oh, you're jealous and possessive, and you're very, standoffish, and you're quiet." It's not necessarily the truth. We're very observant people, and we just don't feel the need to get in the drama. It's just what it's about. Look at Gene, his hands are There's just part of it. There it is. It's not necessary. If a Scorpio person pays attention to you, be known to you that you have something of value that they're interested in, because they won't waste time on things that they consider superficial. It just doesn't happen.
Okay.
It's not what they're about.
So that's what our relationship's all about now.
But with you being a Scorpio rising, you kind of get each other a little bit.
Okay.
I think there's some of that stuff in there.
I think Jean must get me a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little bit going there where it's an easier flow than it would be if you were a different type of a different sign, maybe,
This is fascinating. I mean, we started out with demonologist, on this show. We did cryptozoologist.
Oh, yeah.
Now astrologist. We're not necessarily doing them in alphabetical order, but they've been interesting. This has been over my head, I'm afraid.
I apologize. I try to keep things as simple as I can. I'm not always the greatest at laying that out to make it super easy.
Hopefully the listeners, the viewers.
I hope so.
They
ask
already
questions
have
on Facebook and I'll help you.
Yeah.
If something I said didn't make sense.
Well, we're
try to
getting into the
re-explain
final
it.
thought. So if there's a way that people can get a hold of you,
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's let them know now, how they can get a hold of you for either psychic.
Yeah.
Or
either psychic, or if you really just want to look at that chart to kind of get yourself into that self-knowing phase and be aware of some of the transits and the bigger.
So how do they get a hold of my
challenges.
friend Laura Briggs?
So you can email me at laurabell1000@yahoo.com, or if you do Facebook at Firestarter826 is my page. It's Mountain Star Holistics.
Laura Bell. Your middle name's Bell?
It's not, but that's my Yahoo address, so that's what I go by. No, my middle name's Eileen.
Bell is a southern name. My mother's name was Ardella Bell, so you said that.
Oh, that is a southern name, Ardella. Wow.
Yeah, you're like...
It's Belle.
Okay.
Because there were too many of us, apparently. The number 1,000. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have a couple things to say. I mean, the next podcast will be Lakeshore Paranormal with Darren Dykehouse. It's also... He's coming back, and this time he's bringing Jamie Ray with Paranormal Wonders, and we're going to talk psychics again, and we're also going to talk smudging, cleansing, that kind of thing. Jean's been asking about that because that's something that I offer as a smudging, but we haven't really got into it in depth. So hopefully we're going to get in depth on the next podcast, and then the following podcast is someone you know.
It is
Heather, the tarot card reader.
Yeah. That's right, Heather.
I mean, she did a reading for you and for our friend Steve Wilson. Yep.
Yes.
And then Steve was very interesting, and we talked about this year from the outer
Moldavite,
space,
yeah.
This gem from outer space, the Moldavite. And then you've been talking about citrine to me, another crystal that has properties that I'm very interested in, and it absorbs negativity.
It does.
It cleanses the chakras. It opens your intuition. It generates wealth, prosperity. It's called the Success Stone. So that's another one that I'm going to check out because of you. I mean,
just carry it with you. It's a great one to just keep your energy, kind of help keep it free of things. And with your moon in Scorpio, you have a propensity to pick up things like that, energies that aren't necessarily yours. It's just a natural attractor, so to speak.
We've been getting a lot of views, so thanks to the
Wonderful.
Viewers out there for checking us out, and listeners. I want to get into this though, this final thought, and then what about the concept of the captain of my soul? You know, William Ernest Henley in a poem Invictus wrote, "It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am captain of my soul." Is that true? Am I captain of my soul? Or is it all in the charts?
The debatable free will versus destiny conversation. I think it depends on who are you? Do you believe that you have control over that? Or do you believe that there's some unforeseen force that guides you? I'm going to tell you astrology is the map to get to that.
Okay.
That would be my final thought, I think you chose when you came in some things to work on. And
then Steve, our friend Steve, was saying that when we're going out is already in the charts too, or it's already destined. How we go out, when we go out, it's already there. It's already written.
It's kind of your roadmap that you wanted to do and wanted to encounter. But at any given point, I think you have the ability to change your mind and veer off that path and take another one. I'm not going to tell you it's not going to keep getting pushed back in your face, but you can maybe look at a different angle. Maybe there's something you'd rather look at. So.
One more reference. William Shakespeare and Julius Caesar wrote, "The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves." So I would paraphrase that as don't blame the moon. And you've got to take responsibility for your actions sometime. You can't just blame it on the moon.
You can't just blame it on the moon. That's kind of true. But I also think that nothing is a mistake. Everything is an opportunity to learn. So it's all in how you view that learning.
I'm learning from you.
Well, thank you.
And the language too. I know you're kind of critical about how we talk about spiritual cleansing, or like there's a problem there ahead of time.
Yeah, I hope that it may come off in that regard. I just feel that respect is such an important thing, and I think you guys have that. I think you understand that. I think it's irresponsible. Does that make sense? To run off into parts unknown and force your opinions or wills or, ideas upon those things. I don't think that that's something that you guys particularly do. But this is a general rule for myself. I try to be respectful of cultures, peoples, and things like that. And I tend to shy away or maybe frown on some things that to me don't seem on the up and up.
Okay. I think there is a right way.
Yeah.
And I think if I hang out with you long enough, I'm going to find out
what
that is.
It's about karma too, and I am not bringing any bad stuff back
there you go.
Me.
Cool. Thanks so much, Laura.
Thank you.
It's been another great show.
Aw, thanks.
Peace out.
Thanks, Gene.